We're live.
And now we are live. Hello, people.
Hello.
Hello.
I thought I was gonna be super late because I was in transition. And if you can see like color spots, because I soaked that shit on there and I made sure to get it. My scalp, see that? My hands are blue. It looks like look, we won't talk about what it looks like I did, but Smurfs could have been involved. So we always like to give a few minutes just because it takes people, it takes people a few minutes to like catch on. But before we get into the topic, let's just go through our normal shit. We have a t-shirt campaign that is going on. It's a really fun t-shirt, and the saying is awesome. And that ends this week sometime, I believe, or the beginning of next week.
June 5th. June 5th.
Okay.
I can't talk, but that's what it is.
But yeah, you should definitely get it. And yes, we get a portion of the proceeds, which we're going to utilize to reinvest into Deviant Witchery, buy new equipment. And then when we meet half our goal, we will start like the giveaway. We will start giving away a lot of great shit. And then when we meet our full goal, we then get crazy. So yeah, check that shit out. Have fun with it. Tonight, we're going to be talking about pop culture witchcraft, and that's fun. We will be discussing The Witch, the movie that was recently released. We're going to be talking about The Vampire Diaries and the originals. If you have any suggestions for different like movies and books and everything like that you would like us to talk on, definitely suggest them. Comment on the YouTube video and let us know what you'd like us to express. And yeah, so let's talk about The Witch because I just saw that and y'all saw that. And what we're gonna do here, if you have any questions too, we're gonna express like how you can utilize this in your craft, how it inspires The Witch, like how it can fuel us and how we can take inspiration from like pop culture to enhance our craft or to inspire and progress us. Because that's just fun. Why not, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So, The Witch.
I loved it. It was awesome. It was terrific. I enjoyed the movie. What I really liked about the movie, if y'all don't know, which a lot of people have written about it, the director and the producers did everything authentically. Like, the lighting was all authentic lighting as far as like natural sunlight or candlelight. All of the set was built as authentically as they could build it. So, and I really enjoyed that. To me, it was a little hard to understand the first time I watched it in some places, like because obviously they spoke the way they spoke back then, and the kids were the hardest for me to understand at times. But by the second time I watched it, I was like, oh, okay. Context clues, all that good stuff. But, yeah, I loved it. I love the fact that they featured that Black Phillip was a big part of this movie because, you know, if you had know any of the folklores and stuff like that, then you know who Black Phillip is. So I just love that was the name of their goat. And that goat was awesome. Was he not? He was like the coolest looking dude.
He was. Yeah.
You know, and I just loved the way the whole really played out. It was awesome. I mean,
yeah, you know what's really cool though is like at the beginning of the first part of it, like the color scheme of the entire movie, it sets the atmosphere as well, you know.
It does.
The soundtrack, like the music, also like it pulls at you. And from the very beginning, you have this, I don't know, you get called into it. And it's not necessarily like a horror movie. It's more of like suspense a little bit. And
oh yeah.
it mind fucks you kind of. But the great thing about like just the beginning part, you can utilize that. Like if you want to like really fuck with someone that and put them in that mindset, you can use this entire movie to kind of create this chaos and this like this almost casting out and this crazy like witch hunt energy within like infighting. You know?
Oh yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that was what was ingenious to me about the movie was the infighting happened within the family, and you had that big play on not just, you know, the lore of witches, but the fact that, you know, the woods, the forest back then was like a very scary place for people. There were real predators back then.
Right.
You know, not so much now, but still.
Right, and before we like keep on, I just want to say, if you haven't seen the movie and you don't want it to be ruined for you, then you might not want to watch the show because we're going to talk about.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert.
So, spoiler alert. Now, proceed. Was there anything you'd like to say about that, Mister?
Well, I think that it was, for non-witches, I think it was a psychological thriller more than it was a scary movie. Like, they kind of made it, the reviews, the pre-release reviews that the critics came out with was like, you know, scariest movie, you know, all year. And I'm like, after I watched it, I was like, really? So then I put my head in that mind frame of I'm watching it as a witch and not watching it as the mundane. And to a mundane,
Right.
it probably did fuck with their head. Because it is very psychologically driven. The whole, and you were talking about actually putting someone in that state of, and this is the time of mass paranoia. Puritanism in and of itself was a paranoid practice of Christianity. They believed in inherent evil and predestination, which kind of led to this entire psychotic timepiece where everybody from birth was destined for either heaven or hell. So they wanted to see indication of what someone's life would be like from early ages, and they kind of marked them, and they kind of said, well, you're probably going to hell because this is the way you were born this way, you know, you're predestined for hell, and that's probably where you're going. That did not stop them from trying to force their religion on everybody, but, you know, whatever. So that mass paranoia and mass hysteria that it happens, I just think it's unique how this was an internal paranoia. This was the family really fighting each other and fighting the witch, which it wasn't. We know that the witch used psychological, you know, warfare. There was never a moment where the witch was actually seen except for one time when she wasn't in hag form or, well, glamored form and shapeshifted form, other than the last scene. And I'm just saying, if you want some inspiration and you want some just raw cinematic power, the last scene of The Witch was brilliant.
The last scene
was. It was so brilliant. It was very freeing. Oh my God. To me, that was the best part of that movie was the end. I mean, the whole movie was terrific.
Yeah.
But the best part was the end. But what was interesting to me was the fact that, and a lot of people forget, they believe that when you were born a sinner. You were born like in sin. Unlike now, which the Christian religion it has really progressed from that point. So, you know, what really tripped them out about the baby being taken, especially the kids, was, oh, he's going to go to hell because it was such a, you know, it was a little baby and hadn't been baptized or anything.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, and that really set the whole, you know, it sort of pulled at the string of the whole mass hysteria that went on, which was interesting to me.
Right, and people didn't, and if we talk about why witches didn't like this movie,
Yeah.
It portrays us in a very real light. I hate to be the bearer of bad news for people who are shocked by me saying that, or any of us saying it for that matter, because we all share the same opinion on this. Um, this is witchcraft that was traditionally driven. Everything that they pulled from was from traditional um, first-hand accounts or written accounts by the judges or any of the juries of the actual witch trials. So the citations, the Man in Black, the flying ointment,
Right.
made of baby fat. All of these things were pulled from folkloric sources, which I thought was amazing. Black Phillip, in and of itself, the pact made with him, all of those things were pulled from sources. So you can argue whether or not these witches of old actually were experiencing these things in the physical. Of course you could, because we don't know. We didn't fly around with them. But these are how, and coming from us who are more traditional witches, a lot of our practices and a lot of our folk magic is driven from those same sources. So for people like us, it doesn't put us in a bad light. It puts us in a very real light, and I thought it was flattering that someone actually portrayed real life, actual details and accounts of the witch trials,
Right.
which are not something that's done. They like to skip the entire historical fact. All they want to talk about is how bad the Christians were and how awful they were in the burning times, and then hundreds of years later with the Inquisition or the Witch Inquisition, I say, not the actual Inquisition like Spanish, but like when they actually were hanging people by the hundreds all over the European and the colonies. So, I mean, they don't talk about that a lot. They want to deem them the bad guys, and I hate to tell you, but to them back then, witches were the bad guys. They were the enemy, and in this movie, they were portrayed yet again as the enemy. But
I don't
at
know.
the same time as the freedom and the raw primal nature of releasing every inhibition that you've been taught from such an early age, and that power of losing all of the things that have weighed you down, and surviving, because essentially Thomason chose to survive.
Right.
It was fucking die out in her fucking house where all of her family members were dead, or sign a pact. What would you? I mean, who wouldn't?
Well, and see,
who would not choose survival?
Right, and that's the thing. It's like, oh, I hear. I do hear echo. Okay.
I'm sorry. Do I need to turn?
I don't know. I just heard my voice. I'm like, oh, I don't want to hear my voice. But no, that's the interesting thing about it is, the witches, were they the enemy though? They were the liberators. Depending on where you place yourself in the story, they were the liberators. They, in a sense, created this death cycle to bring rebirth, to free and liberate and uplift and take all of those chains and shackles and release that shit for this girl. And so that's a powerful thing. And if y'all have if you want to like throw in anything, if you have anything that you saw in the movie that you want to discuss or you think it'd be great to utilize in your witchery, feel free to like speak up and we'll definitely discuss it. I think that this would be a perfect movie to discuss in like the coming of witchy age, like initiation of sorts, because if you watch this is like this whole death and life thing. It's this whole challenge and this these negative things happening, and then you come into your own power. You come into your own, you get rid of what's standing in your way, and then you find yourself, and you find that you are who you are. And maybe other people were seeing it before you. Maybe all along this was who you were meant to be and what you were supposed to step into, and other people were witnessing that in you before you did. The fun thing about this is you can actually work this in malediction to outcast someone, because really, the first scene is these Christians, these Christian people, being outcast by their people. You know, and so
Right.
they are placed elsewhere. They have to find a different place to live on the outskirts. And yeah, so that's a very interesting. There's a lot of fun things you can do with it magically.
Definitely. And, it's interesting, like you said, as far as revealing Thomason, whenever you first see her character, she is praying and she's talking about the fact that she is not, she can't reconcile the Puritan lifestyle with the way she feels.
Right.
She's like, I have impure thoughts. I want to have a voice. She's a very opinionated woman already, and and that's how you first meet her. So you know right at that moment, that she's not going to survive, or not necessarily not going to survive, but she's not going to thrive in that lifestyle. And also, like, when the father, everything he does is like wrong. He doesn't know how to grow crops. He has no clue,
Right.
and you can tell because all of his crops. Of course, the mother thinks they're damned because they've been kicked out already, because of his pride. He didn't think that the Puritans were pure enough, So it's really interesting to me, and I think that would be a lot of interesting energies to play with, especially as far as like actually kind of connecting and channeling Thomason, because she was already a very opinionated and liberal woman.
Right.
Just on her own with no outside support. Women nowadays have a lot of outside support, even if sometimes we don't feel like it. This is a girl who, this is just how she felt. She felt that in her core. So she can be a great person or energy to utilize in stepping into your power, because before she even signed a pact, she was already very strong.
Right. You saw her progress into being prepared for the next step, and at the end,
Right.
that scene where she starts to become a part of the entire experience. The other witches that are cackling and dancing, and that big old fire, and she starts to fly, and then she starts to laugh, and when she starts to laugh, you feel that sense of like accomplishment and that release, like that finally, like that crazy, it's hysteria really, because you're like, all this shit that just happened, it's done. Like, I'm gonna have what I want. Like, I now will be
Free.
I'm free. Yeah. So yeah, it's perfect for aspecting and channeling to start somewhere, especially for someone who doesn't know their power, or someone who's afraid of their power and who needs assistance in stepping into that.
And who can't relate to that sentiment of being a wee bit more different than everyone in your family? I think that unless you were born in a line of witches, I think that all of us can relate to that. And it's awesome because we can relate to that freedom that witchcraft really gave to us. And so if you want to, if you are having that lack, you can find the sentiment with her, but you can also use her as inspiration to feel that freedom and feel that, and it was oddly sexual to me. I think if we're like placing it under to me, it's not, obviously it's not a sin thing, but I think sex and temptation was a big undertone of the entire movie.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
The entire movie was like sex. It was sex. It was like this slow, then it sped up a little bit. I mean, it was kind of foreplay. Okay, we're right into all of this shit, and then finally, release. It was the undertone was very orgasmic, very sexually driven in a way too, because you imagine being she had no outlet for anything. None of them really did. And we talked about this. I think me and Melissa, me and you talked about this. How the main sin that the witches preyed off of for the young boy was that he had temptation was his drawback, which is funny because they all kind of died because of their biggest flaws, and that because it was like the witches were using that energy and knowing and psychologically getting in the minds of their enemies essentially and working to their demise using their weaknesses. So so it's awesome. It's fantastic because I mean, he was the first really to go, and temptation was that's the first thing you saw was him looking at his sister's chest, and as very you can call that incestuous, or you can just call it fact that he had absolutely no other outlet of any kind of sexual energy.
Exactly.
I don't think it was really incestuous. I think it was just it happens. And
right. Well, and there's no one else to look at. Where else is he going to look at? And also what was really interesting to me was he experienced in his death a kind of freedom too. If you recall his death scene, he was very relieved to see the face of God, what he thought was the face of God. And he was like, I see you, and I'm sitting in your lap, and I'm free of this. Because for him, besides the temptation, it was just a hell. I mean, he was stressed out about his youngest brother I think it was a little boy, youngest brother being taken. He was stressed out about the fact that their family was falling apart. He could already see it, with the crops and things like that. He was miserable, And again, like you said, he had no one else to look at. I mean, he wasn't going to be finding his true love anytime soon. And he was like really stressed. And for him, it was also a form of freedom. Whenever he died, he was like, I'm free.
Right.
He was free of all that bullshit. And so as much as the temptation was his downfall, it was also his release from a really bad situation, And
I didn't really, I felt connected to all of the characters in weird ways, which I do. I love movies when I can actually get inside their heads and find a redeeming quality, or even, because obviously they were all fucked up. I mean, they were just all fucked up. The only person that I had a hard time relating to it all was the mother, because she was just fucking batshit crazy. Like, made no sense kind of fucking batshit crazy. And yeah, she got it pretty good. But I would say and we can argue whether or not she had signed a pact. We don't know.
I don't know. It seemed like
because she was feeding familiars.
Right.
Right.
And so that was always an interesting, did she get tricked into doing it? Was she just used essentially by the coven?
I think so. I think she was used as food for familiars.
And if they wanted Thomason from the beginning, and she had precognitive energy the entire time. She kind of saw all of what was without knowing it, and it wasn't one of those movies where she actually saw it. It's like that entire time she knew. It's like she had this energy about her that knew that her family was gonna just go to fucking hell. Like they were just like, well, this is might as well just go ahead and toss it up now because it's gonna go. Not that she didn't. She did fight for her family, I thought, but she also spent a lot of time fighting against them because she was to the entire family, the main antagonist.
Right.
When in reality, they were all taking themselves down.
Mm-hmm.
And the funny thing about the entire experience is you can, as a witch, and if you have not flown before, you can utilize the entire experience to kind of get the feeling of how to fly and what it feels like, because throughout the entire movie, there's this weird feeling that that triggers the witch, and as you progress at the very end, you get that release, and you kind of experience that for a brief moment what it's like to actually fly. And it's not just when she actually flies, it's that moment, and then you travel back to the beginning and you feel everything. What is that noise?
I don't know. I hear it, but I don't know what it is.
Is it me?
I think it is.
I keep hearing like beeping and then echo.
There's no beeping here.
Oh. I don't have any beeping over here, but I keep hearing it.
I think it's the echo.
My phone to make sure I had the sound off.
But yeah, so that definitely, if you follow that process, it's a very initiatory process, but it's also a process which shows you how to fly, because you release everything. When you fly, you have to release a lot of things. You have to let go. You have to submit, and you have to step into that intense, craze-like freedom.
Right.
I heard that echo. So now we've discussed a little bit what would you utilize this movie if you're going to take inspiration, or even utilize the movie itself in your craft, like to cast? What would you do, and why?
Well, other than what I've already said, because I think everything that we all said we could utilize, any aspect of the movie, because it was just that powerful. Like you said, I can't help but think Maledictive when it comes to it, because it does give me great inspiration. And we were actually, me and you talked about that a little briefly last night, Michael, with using people's downfalls, And we were, so that's what I draw from it. The fact that though it was never proven and it was never said, though the mother did suspect that some evil play was at work against their family, she thought that it was some punishment from God. But obviously the witches were involved. It directly with the young boy, but indirectly with everyone else. And yeah, I saw that.
Okay.
Yeah. Anyways, yeah, that's what I would do. I think that if there's any inspiration to draw from, other than just like you said, the flying aspect of it, the aspect of learning how to know one's enemy and knowing how to get them. I mean, knowing how to fuck them up. That was me. That time there was a BP, but that was from my Facebook. But yeah. Fuck in their heads. Like, this is all psychological energy, and psychic. A good witch is an amazing psychic, and because that's the building blocks of witchcraft, and to get in someone's head and to fuck with them in that way. You can fuck with them in any way, but the best thing to do is make their worst fear and their biggest downfall and their biggest what they have issue with, and their inner battles and inner demons come out to play.
Right.
They will not only will it take them down, but it will aid in taking themselves down. Like they will become their own worst enemy.
Right. I probably would utilize it, since you already covered malediction. I will go for witch empowerment. And this is what I would do. I would probably, I would watch the movie as I am contemplating like the casting and what I want to say. But I would definitely repeat the end scene as I am channeling energy, and I would take that energy from that scene and how it influences me, and I'd raise that up, and I'd pour it into probably candle to do candle magic. And to possibly utilize that working to imbue like a pendant or something with power. And what and that scene specifically, the whole thing, that scene, just when you listen to the cackling and when you hear the fire and when you see everything happening at once, it it reminds the witch of how strong we are and how like our past and how all these things have happened and we've fought for and we've gone through and we've made it. And so I would utilize all that energy to remind myself exactly who I am, what I am, and what I'm capable of. And so I would take that energy and put it into something that I could wear. And I would make sure that I'd program it where it would intensify my power. It would remind me every time I use it um, to step into that strength, to step into that liberation from what holds me back.
Yeah, I like that. Okay, I'm going to come at it from a whole different angle. But, a lot of the reason why I personally thought or felt from the movie that there was such a conflict between the witches and this family is because this family intruded upon their forest. They without any kind of permission given or offering or anything, they just walked in the forest and started taking from the forest whatever they needed, the wood to build their home, everything else. So to me, I think it would be a great inspiring movie to watch while making a type of protection for your land. One of the protection that's dual focused in the fact that it protects from people from intruding, but also if they do intrude upon your land, there is a consequence to be paid. That because to me that is really what was going on. They just showed up in their territory and decided, hey, I'm going to take this land, and they weren't too happy about it. So I think this would be a great movie. I would watch the movie while making a type of protection, powder, oil, whichever, probably a good little mixture of both, or even a witch's bottle if you wanted to. And especially the scenes where the music is very dramatic and intense before they start to intrude into the forest, and then the retaliation that happens afterwards. So, yeah, I think that would be... And obviously they hunted in the forest, and it's interesting to me how the scenes where something bad would happen to the family, immediately you'd see them again going into the forest being stupid. It's like every time something bad happened to them, they just kept repeating the same stupid behavior.
Which, and that tells us, because, a witch's power is very alluring. We draw things to us. And right. So, there's so much in this movie that you can utilize. It's crazy.
Yeah. I think that would be fun. I think that would be a fun way to utilize this movie, to draw inspiration from this movie.
Right, yeah. And if y'all have anything, if you've seen the movie, you want to speak up and express, how you would utilize it or anything like that, feel free. We are going to move on to, which one should we do next? Vampire Diaries or the originals? Vampire Diaries. I chose. Because Vampire Diaries came first and then original. So let's talk about the Vampire Diaries. And I think the Vampire Diaries is super fun. So there's a lot more than just witches and other, energies to work with when you're working with a TV show. So how do y'all feel about this? What do you think of the Vampire Diaries? How do you perceive their witches? And what does it make you think when you think of power and casting and utilizing it for your craft?
I'm a wee bit obsessed, first of all, with the witches in the Vampire Diaries. Not so much the originals for some reason. I love the show. They're both fucking fantastic. I'm a little obsessed with all, but just the magic. Who doesn't like Bonnie Bennett? Though she was drastically different in the books. Who doesn't like the show Bonnie Bennett?
Right.
though they got to stop with this whole making her weak thing because I don't like it. But yeah, she's a badass witch, and I love the energy that they bring in the situations that she kind of puts in. She is a very very strong, again, psychic witch, in various ways. Also, with a lot of my spells after I started watching the Vampire Diaries, I'd love to utilize Latin
Mm-hmm.
and dead languages because a lot of their spells obviously are Latin or some form of dead language. But what I love about it was the tie to the other side and the ancients that kind of help drive the magic forward. And the ancient witches and the witches of old, the ancestors, and the big time spirit communication between the witches of the Vampire Diaries and the originals, and their past witches. They were very very important. They're hugely important in both plots, really, of both of the shows. But that's my favorite part. The need and the power that comes with the ancient witches and the witches that have long been dead but are still very active and still very powerful from the other side of the hedge. So that's I love it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm the exact opposite with the witches in the shows. Even though I love Bonnie better in the books, but I like Bonnie in the show. I like the original witches a little bit better. But and I do love the fact they actually include something like ancestral work, because no other show that I can really think of has ever really made that a point. Because and that to me says somebody did their homework somewhere.
Right.
So to have something so relevant. But I don't like the way it's portrayed, because to me it's so limiting for them. If the ancestors are pissed off, they don't help them, which, I mean, that happens to us, but it doesn't make our magic weaker. We just use something else. Where in the show, if their ancestors are pissed off at them, they can't use their magic at all. And I'm just like, no.
In the originals.
In the originals, yes. The Vampire Diaries.
It's not as big of a thing in the Vampire Diaries. That's true. It's not as limiting.
No, because in the Vampire Diaries, you have the other side. They do have other forms of magic, and there's, and that was one thing I was going to also express, is like, I appreciate that, but then they have, what is the magic that Bonnie was learning? What was it called? It was like
expression.
Expression?
Yeah.
Okay, and that was like all without the spirit, the ancestral energy was like pure, raw, and primal and very personal, which kind of created a weird disconnect. There was like this weird energy of utilizing only yours, especially when you're doing big shit. And I love the way that it expressed like the consequences of that, and how utilizing like this personal or your own power for like all these big things, how it can get to your head, and how you can like think that you're just invincible, and it's very interesting. I appreciate the craft and the witchcraft in this show, just because I don't feel like it's as limiting as I feel like the originals are. And in the originals, I'm not a fan of. I like the witches. I love witches, anything, but the witches in the originals kind of annoy me. But with the Vampire Diaries, I just feel they express witchcraft with a little more freedom, even though they do have things that tie into it, but there's more power, there's more of it, and they enact it, and it's just, I don't know, I love it.
And it's more realistic in the Vampire Diaries, because that's, I mean, granted, I don't, shut down the brains or burn out the brain cells of a vampire every day, because I would love to. That would be cool to, first of all, know a vampire. Second of all, be able to fuck with them like that. But in reality, I would say that it's way more. I don't know any witches that are limited to the power of their lineage. So that for that reason, I love the Vampire Diaries because it's just more actual. It's more based in fact. Because the other side is an aspect of magic.
Mm-hmm.
Because they do aid you in that ability, but it's not. That's not your limitation. You don't have that
Right.
limitation put on you. So therefore, again, yeah, I agree. It's not as first of all, it's not as limiting, but it is more based in fact than any other. Especially when it comes to the connection with nature, because in the Vampire Diaries,
Mm-hmm.
they're hugely connected to the spirits all around them, be it the witches of the non-witches or witch spirits or the magic around him. I remember when Bonnie meets her mom
Mm-hmm.
and she's a vampire. She says that it was though she's grateful to be alive, she feels nothing because she went from feeling everything around her to everything being she's being disconnected to everything. And I can relate to that so much because and I think we all can. Who can't walk outside? I mean, on very intense days, walking outside is like a fucking head rush. You get fucking high from it because you literally are touching every fucking thing on a psychic level that is alive outside. When you walk barefooted on the ground, you
Mhm.
literally are communicating with all of that energy all at once and seeing it, physically seeing it move before your eyes, the way that regular humans, regular mundanes can't see it, and you're feeling it on a completely different level than anyone else does. And
Um,
that's the most beautiful thing I think about being a witch is because everything is alive
right.
and you feel it so intensely,
You just
and that's beautiful.
you can learn so much. I mean, I think that the Vampire Diaries actually is a very great teaching tool as to how we experience witchcraft because especially for the witch alone, it teaches us our connection. And every witch in the show, they have this sense of service. They have this sense of
Right.
obligation, but service, responsibility. Like when they finally accept their power and step into it, they own that and they realize that they can't fight it. And when they do fight it, bad shit happens. Or when they do fight it, it just becomes more painful. So I think that's a perfect expression. It teaches us like our spirit work. It teaches us that we are of service. It teaches us that as witches, we do have a responsibility to the spirits that we work with and what we are of service of. So it definitely teaches that co-creative atmosphere and how we interconnect with the spirits around us, the spirit within us, elementals, and everything. It's I like it. I
Mm-hmm.
really do.
I do love the fact that the Vampire Diaries world that extends to the originals world shows that when they turn from like a witch into a vampire, that the witch's abilities are gone. I like that because there are other books, movies, and stuff where you find that they'll have like sorcerers or witches that are vampires, and to me that just clashes so much because witchcraft is a very alive thing where a vampire is animated death. It's a dead body that's animated by magic.
Right.
So it would make sense that a witch would no longer be a witch once she died. It's gone. Now you're a dead body that is animated by magic. So to me, it would be very dangerous to be able to manipulate magic when you are, in fact, a dead body that is alive because of
Fueled by
magic.
magic, yeah.
Right. Because, it just doesn't really make sense to be able to practice witchcraft. So I did really enjoy that. To me, it makes a lot more it just makes a lot more sense. And they definitely, because witchcraft is a very organic thing, and in order to have something that organic, you kind of have to be
Organic.
I
organic.
also yeah, I also in this show when there's levels. There's different levels of experience, and so the witch will express like, I'm not that powerful. I can't do that. Or take two of us. if I channel that much energy, that's too much for me. I'll die. And even when Bonnie, like, she pushes the limits, or she pushes her boundaries, and she, like, she gets nosebleeds, and she gets pain, and you can see it tearing up her body. I think that's pretty cool, because it's necessary for a witch to understand that when you try and do things way above your level of experience and know-how, it can have some dangerous effects on you.
Right. I mean, you might not get nosebleed, but if you
Right.
summon something that you don't have any idea what the hell you're doing,
Well,
and freak out,
Well,
there's going to be consequence.
and
honestly, though, you could get nosebleeds because and reason with me here. Granted, I don't get a nosebleed all the time. I don't push my. I know who I am. I know my limits, and I strive to push my limits. But I also know when I'm going too far and when I need to hold back. And I think that's an important lesson that can be learned from such a pop culture universe.
Absolutely.
But you think of when you were full on, and I'm not saying channeling like spirit in that way. When you are using every bit of energy around you, and there have been intense spells that I've worked where I needed to literally channel everything that was around me. Every living thing that was around me, I channeled their energy. Granted, I don't do humans, and I don't do animals most of the time. It's not that I haven't, but most of the time I don't do animals. But just every natural energy around you, when you are raising that much energy and you are kind of flowing it through you and then outward into a more focused area, your blood pressure raises. Your energy just becomes so intense, and we've all done spells where our heads have physically started to hurt because we're doing it. So you're raising that energy, especially if you have, like me, I have nosebleeds. Like, I can walk outside and it be a little too dry or a little too humid, depending on that, my nose will start bleeding. So I'm not saying that it wouldn't happen to me, but again, that shows the lessons that can be hardly learned if you're pushing into areas that you probably shouldn't be until you're ready to do that.
Right. So let's have some fun with this. So let's take the Vampire Diaries, the show, as inspiration. You can do vampire, werewolf, doesn't matter. But let's, how would you utilize it, like in spell work, in a casting? Let's say anything, malediction, love work, protection, anything. What's the first thing that comes to you, and how would you utilize like inspiration from the show to create this?
I would go with glamoury, because that's used so much by everybody
Mm-hmm.
in that show. You know, the vampires will manipulate memories. Even the werewolves have a type of glamour about them. You know, and of course the witches as well. So I think that would be a fun show to inspire different types of glamour, especially ones like, I don't know if y'all remember, like at the very beginning of the first season. The only reason why I remember this is because I've started the Vampire Diaries over. So I've missed like a few seasons, and I just like, screw it, I'll watch it from the beginning. But when Damon first shows up, you see this raven all the time. Now, he's not actually physically changing into this, but it's the glamoury that he is portraying. You know, it's the mystique and mystery that he is utilizing. You know, and so I think that would be a very fun way, and as a way of, not that we don't already have sort of the mystique and seductive thing going on for ourselves anyway because we're witches, but that would be a really fun energy to channel and use to add even more so, especially if you want to intimidate without actually having to curse or hex.
Yeah, and like when because it's a TV show and it's not real, but
Right.
we tend to invest a lot into that, and it inspires us, our artistic expression, and so when we are utilizing it, it makes it even more real for us because we have a very great imagination when it comes to like TV, movies, and stuff. So it helps to fuel that aspect where we need to, visualize, or we need to create this situation. That happens all the time in fan fiction, and that's kind of what we would be doing here, but totally different.
Right, like witchcraft, and like magic. Uh, but yeah, I think that would be so much fun to envision, especially whenever you are making a certain glamoury for yourself. Even if it's just you're not actually working with herbs and stuff, but actually creating a glamoury to step into, as far as like a thought form, and. Yeah, that would be fun to play with as far as like, especially like I said, if you wanted to intimidate someone without actually hexing or cursing or using any kind of malediction, you just kind of want to fuck with them a little bit, and maybe just someone who you don't think is some little person who's just irritating you that you don't want to like really mess with, and you can create that glamoury just to kind of fuck with them, like you don't know who I am. Let me tell you.
Because we've all done it. Okay, we've all been like we knew someone that we didn't really like, and we're not necessarily cursing them or anything, but we're making us seem fucking 10 feet tall and scary as fuck when they're around. I mean, that's perfect. Like that's awesome.
It'd be something.
Yeah, and then what I would draw, and it's not really, it's more of a practice rather than spell work. They love to bind their spells to astrological influences or big revolving influences, such as the moon, such as a comet, such as an eclipse. They channel and they combine and they understand in the show, which again is actual. It's based in fact that there are objects and there are astrological events and there are things that make us more intense or that are more intense in and of itself. There are places in the world whose energy are just more intense. There's these areas where magic is so fluid that you can tap into it just naturally. And the wonderful thing I love about it is binding a spell to astrological influences. Now that I know a little bit more on astrology as of late, I think that's fucking awesome. Because the thing about it is that astrology does revolve itself regularly. It is a cycle, and what's in the sky right now will be in the sky again, but it's going to be a while before it is. And where the positions of the planet are, what eclipse is coming next. So if you wanted to bind a spell and bind that energy to an astrological influence, and it can't be broke or changed or done anything with until the event happens again. That is a fucking surefire way to make sure your spell cannot be broken by any fucking thing. If you bind it to such a powerful force and it's drawing its energy from that.
I think he froze.
Okay, so he froze and it wasn't me. Okay, I was like, did I freeze or did he freeze? Well, he froze, y'all. He just up and froze.
Am I back?
Oh, you're back.
You're back.
That's the last thing I said.
You were talking about the fact that the spell would be unbroken until that astrological event occurred again.
Oh, well, that's exactly what I said, and then I ended it, and I was like, I did make a comment that it could be limiting in a way, but at the same time, it could be just as powerful. So I love their connection and their understanding of astrological and power in objects and things like that.
Right. Yes, girl, you need to watch this show.
Yes, it's very good. They have it on Netflix. Since the first season.
They have every season except the last one.
But yeah, that's a very powerful. That would be wonderful to work. I'm gonna have to take that into consideration for something. But I like that. What would I do? Of course, I'll do protection. I would actually utilize the show for inspiration to create a barrier, because they're always like binding people, like banishing or creating this barrier where vampires can't get in or they're making sure that people stay in a spot. So I probably would watch a few episodes of when that happens, and take that as inspiration to create a barrier spell and channel that energy and that experience, that experience where the witch cripples the vampire, or where the witch creates this barrier and they can't get out. So I would definitely play that situation out in my head, create it, and channel it, and then project it out, and utilize that as inspiration to create this distinct barrier from me or what I want to be protected.
I love that.
But yes, that's super fun.
I hate to plug, but I'm going to plug, and I don't know if you'll ever create it again, but you have a product that nullifies magic. And if y'all did not order one of his, what was it, a toolkit? What did you call it?
Necessity.
It was the necessity, yeah. That I don't know if he'll ever come out with it again, but if you do, you need to grab it up, because Michael actually has created a project for that. Okay, there's a season, I can't remember what season it is, but I think it's the anti-magic. They make a border of anti-magic around.
Oh yeah.
That'd be fucking awesome. Great. And Michael, again, plug in the Deviant Witch and his products over there. He has a fucking product that is amazing for that.
Yeah, and I don't know if I'll be making that again, because it is maybe in very small batches, but I don't know. I don't know.
It was an awesome product, so if you didn't get it.
Sorry.
But yeah, I don't know if I want that out there as much. But so we have the originals, and the originals is very interesting. I love the originals. I'm still catching up on this season. The witches in the originals it's very fascinating, because they're very tied to ancestral work. They're very linked to the ancestors of the place. It's not necessarily they could have ancestors elsewhere, but it's of that specific place. They're buried there. That's their ancestors. That's their connection to magic. That's it.
Well, it does make a lot of sense, because it's New Orleans, and New Orleans, if any place, has definitely got a lot of history, a lot of ancestral magic in it anyway. But, yeah, I don't like the fact that it's that limiting. Granted, there's other witches that come along that don't have those limitations. And sometimes their magic is bigger and better. It just depends on how, this season the ancestors are a lot more ferocious. So it's a little different. Of course, I don't know if Michael's seen that far, so I won't give it away. But they do some interesting work with the fixing that little issue. But anyway, I like Vincent. He is my favorite witch in that series, I think. Really, he is super powerful. But what I really like about him is he doesn't take shit from anybody. You have several witches that have shown up through there, and they've tried to be all big badass, but he's kind of the real deal.
Right.
And he is not just concerned about witches. He is concerned about everybody. He wants to make sure everybody makes it out okay.
Right. And can I just say, it's about goddamn time we have a distinct, powerful male witch.
Right.
Representing, okay?
Right. And he is a badass, and I just love how he hid that for so long. Which, he went through some really traumatic shit, so I can understand why he sort of was no, fuck the witchcraft, screw the ancestors, fuck all this, I'm not involved. But then once he becomes involved, it's damn. He represents in a big way, because he just fucks up everybody. But, yeah, I really like him. He is very good. I think he is really the ideal way you want to kind of be a witch. You know, he doesn't hesitate in cursing someone if they fuck with any of his, but at the same time, on the whole, he wants to make sure everybody is okay. He doesn't just,
Right.
you know, he doesn't get into power plays, and he doesn't get into the power struggles. He doesn't give a shit about all that. He doesn't have to. He's powerful as hell. You know, he didn't have to prove anything to anybody. He knows.
At the same time, and this is my problem with Mitza, he's like the self-hating Jew of the.
Only for a little while. He gets over that though.
But that is such his fatal flaw, though.
It
He
really
doesn't-
is. But if you're gonna have a
that's
fatal
his.
flaw,
It's not like even when he does get over it, it's like, motherfucker, you really had a problem with using your magic and you're that fucking badass. Like, don't give me that why. And then at the same time, yes, I do love him, and I love him now more than I did last season. And I've only watched a little bit. Don't give it away, because I've only watched a little bit of season 3. Only a little bit in like small dosages, because I don't want to pay for the entire season, because I know it will eventually come on Netflix, so I don't want to pay for it. But anyway,
you need to get Hulu. I'm gonna have to give you my Hulu account stuff so you can just
I
watch
know,
it.
because Hulu has a lot of shit that Netflix just hadn't got. But with the witchcraft that and they do present like the original family. Obviously, they were all witches. They were all born witches, even though a lot of them became other than witches later on. I like the essence of those witches a wee bit better than the New Orleans witches. The only reason being is, again, the limitation of the power. They have to come up with other ways to summon magic if their connection with the ancestors are broken. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, because the sacrificial magic, the clan that does the sacrificial magic, which is only brought in I think in season 1. But that shit is powerful, and that is, and it's a good way of using another essence to fuel your magic rather than your connection with the ancestors. So there are ways to get around those rules, and they are powerful in and of their own right. But at the same time, when the ancestors kind of like step in, you're fucking nothing. You're a human, and that part I don't like, because it's just stupid. I think it's so limiting.
Well, that's what I love
have a
about
problem with the whole fucking canon of how the original vampire, every other vampire in the fucking world, can never become a witch after they become a vampire. But the original family has found a way around that. They find a fucking way around everything. Like, really? And at the same time, and as much as I like her and I like the character that she brought to the last season, Freya, as powerful as she is also weak as fuck.
Yeah.
And it is annoying to me. Like, they all find limitations in their magic. That seems to be the key thing. It's almost polar opposite than Vampire Diaries, because Vampire Diaries has the problem with you're using too fucking much magic, and it's causing you repercussions, whereas you're causing yourself repercussions by not fucking using the magic in the originals, because you got it, you're just not creative enough.
Right.
But again, the psychic energy of the original witches is intense, because they put an emphasis on, okay, I have to connect and I have to be there, and we have to do it at this time while they're doing and you see it, and the way that you see it through the camera and how it's portrayed while you're watching the show is very similar to how it is when you're connecting with someone else while performing magic, because you're seeing it in your mind's eye. You're literally clear seeing it. You're fucking remote viewing a scene while drawing energy or putting forth energy into that scene. I love that.
I do too. Yeah, and I liked it whenever the crazy ass aunt shows up with Freya, because the reason why I did enjoy that is they weren't tied to ancestral anything. That was their own power, and Claudia Black was a badass in that.
Yes.
She was. Like, she was fucking awesome. And I love the way she died. I think it was just great. I just... it was just wonderful. Like, the ending of Esther and her at the same time was beautiful and great and wonderful, and I'm like, finally, you're fucking dead, bitch. Like, both of them, not just one of them, but fucking both of them, because they were both awful in their own way, even though they were as awesome in their own right as well.
Right.
But yeah, that was cool. And Freya's, again, she's not limited to the whole ancestral rule. None of them are. Though I think that the Michelsons have become connected with that because now some of their dead are buried there. So, and they're not just buried there, but they are, what is the word they use? Consecrated?
Right.
They consecrate their dead to the land, to the spirit of place, which again, awesome. And it's not that I would never do that because I totally would, but I just don't see it as limiting as that universe sees that.
Right. And that's kind of like the beauty of this show, where they have like a lot of like graveyard work. They have the ancestor work. They have group work. They work in basically a huge coven, like a big circle. They work together as best as they can to create and uplift and be better witches. But that rarely happens. Like they want to make the witch community like bigger and better, and yet that never happens. Like they can't. And that's kind of what irritates me about this whole thing, is like these witches are supposed to be very powerful and strong, and yet they really rarely amount to anything. And it's almost like they're the familiar, in a sense, to the vampire. I didn't like that.
Yeah, that's true. But you know, it's kind of funny because one of the main reasons why they can't get anywhere is because there's so much infighting in the witches between the different groups that I can't help but feel like it's kind of relevant to the way witches are. I mean, it's not always, but it's kind of relevant.
Okay. Now you can say something.
Could you hear me before?
No, all I heard was echo.
Okay.
I was trying to...
No, I was just saying that I couldn't tell that I was echoing on my side. But I was just saying that it's interesting that the reason why they can't get anywhere, the witches themselves in the originals, is because there's all this infighting between different groups, which is exactly kind of how witches are in real life. So that's kind of relevant, really. I don't really like it, but I'm like, yeah, that would happen.
Okay, so now taking everything we know about the originals into consideration, how would y'all utilize that as inspiration for crafting? Or who would you channel to create something? But yeah, who in this series would you channel to cast or to bring something else into your reality? Like who would you channel to bring their energy for working that you do?
Man, that's so challenging because there's so many I like for different reasons. I'm gonna go with I would love to do something and channel like Dahlia, because she was such a badass. She was such a powerful woman and witch, you know, and again another one of those women who is much you know, beyond her time in terms of, you know, the whole reason why she was the way she was because the Vikings were like, hey, come be my bitch, and she's like, no, I'm not going to do that. You know, I'm not going to, you know, really slave for you. So, but then she also manipulated and used them because she knew that was the only way to survive. But all the while, she's extremely hostile about it. So yeah, I think she would be very good to channel for different reasons. Definitely malediction. She had some amazing. I mean, putting someone to sleep for 1,000 years just so you can stay young, and tying their power to you in order to be more powerful. I mean, that was the whole thing. She made Freya a slave so she could have the mojo. You
Right.
know, that's kind of, oh my gosh, powerful. So, not that I necessarily want to just tie someone to me in order to have power, but even though the idea is kind of fun. But, you know, you can still tie other things to you. Let's say that you want to become more powerful. You want to channel inspiration from Dahlia, so you tie yourself to, oh, well, it would be kind of difficult, but you could tie yourself to something that would be around for a long time. Let's say you tie yourself to a very old tree, you know, and channel that energy.
Or an astrological event.
Or an astrological event, you know, something like that. And that would be really interesting. And even, because, you know, she had, and she went about it very smart. She had very specific limitations and consequences to tying herself to someone else, and they all benefited her. You know, all of it. So that's why they had to kill her. So, yeah, she was very smart and very, very devious. And to me, her kind of energies would be ones you would want to channel, especially if you wanted to do something that was kind of risky and were unsure of the limitations you needed to set on something. She had very interesting and smart ideas on how to execute that.
Yes, and Mr. Hunter, what say you? What would you? Don't forget to unmute yourself.
I did. I just did. If I had to pick, none of them really, truly, because I don't like them.
Pick one.
I'm gonna pick a non-witch probably.
That's fine.
I love not so much the witches, but I love the non-witches. And I'm a huge fan of the Michelson family, though their lack of rules that everyone else has to follow annoys me. They're fucking badass and they're awesome. And I love the energy that they have because they will fucking, you know, cut each other out as fast as possible, but you let someone else fuck with them and they're going to go after you so hard that you're going to wish you never fucking were born. Like, that's how they go after you. And that's so reminiscent to my family. Because though we may bitch amongst ourselves, we have each other's back. And that's not just my birth family either. There's quite a few witches that I would do that for as well. And yeah, fuck that shit. Like, I love it. I would totally channel Rebecca, and I guess she is a witch now. But Rebecca is one of my favorite characters of the whole fucking both universe or both shows. And same way with Klaus, because he may be out for himself, but there's almost nothing he would not do to help his family and extended family as well.
Oh, really? That's wonderful. I would actually probably channel another non-witch, and that would be Elijah. And I would channel Elijah because, well, he's beautiful. No, because honestly, the way he is and the way he expresses himself is very beautiful. You could channel him for seduction, for lust, for connection between someone you care for, because he's always out about for his family, and he's wanting to connect and bringing, you know, everyone together. So you can channel his energy to really even bring, if you are with someone and you want to express yourself in a very distinct way, and come across very proper and very your words are just going to melt them, you can channel Elijah. Great for interviews.
Hmm. Oh yeah, he is so debonair and very posh and just really yummy. But man, he's got some deep-seated issues.
Yeah, if you're gonna channel him, make sure that you're clean the whole time, and you're
Right. Don't get dirty.
But yeah, that's kind of that is that, y'all. That's pop culture witchcraft, and I will definitely put a blog up and talk a little bit more about maybe certain witches in each movie and show we discuss, and maybe create a formula or share something, and then post us with it. I hope y'all enjoyed it. It was fun. It's different, and it's great knowing that you can actually channel and take inspiration from Hollywood. We have so many witches bitching about Hollywood this, Hollywood that. I'm just like over here, well, I can utilize that because, and again, this is something that you have to consider. There are so many people who are not practitioners who watch these shows and watch these movies, and they invest their energy into this. They add to the power of this experience. Therefore, as a witch, we can tap into that and utilize it, maximize it to create results for us. So that's
Plus, I mean, it's Hollywood. Hollywood doesn't get anything right. I don't care if it's witches or the Wild Wild West or whatever. They don't get shit right. It's Hollywood. It's a show. It's supposed to be entertaining, and it's supposed to be inspiring. That's the point. So even if it's not just with witchcraft, I mean, it is meant to inspire you in general. So yeah, I love it. It's fun. We're definitely going to do this more. So y'all give us suggestions on shows and stuff that you want us to watch or talk about.
Yeah, absolutely. If you want us to read a book, if there's specific books or characters in books that you'd like to talk about, we are willing and open to discussing them and reading them if we haven't read them before, because it's very important for us to not be stagnant. A stagnant witch is dangerous. And it's boring. We need to get out there. We need to have fun. We need to get creative, and this is one way that we can kind of do that. And it shows you, and it stimulates the witch mind, where you're constantly thinking how I can utilize something to inspire my craft, how I can utilize something to create more power, or to create something and utilize that to cast. It creates a better witch, and so it's a fun experience. If y'all again have any questions, if you have any comments that you'd like to do, for sure comment on the YouTube video, and be sure to subscribe to our personal channels because we're revamping them. We are about to do some fun shit with them, so definitely subscribe to our personal channels as well, and we will talk to you later. Peace.